Hey guys, okay, so this is gonna be your first video. So again, remember you just need your props close by. This is gonna be, double up your mat or triple up if you have it. Super slow, just giving you the fundamentals of Pilates and understanding what you need to feel, how to breathe, all the fun things of like holding your abs and knowing the kind of the cues that will work to help you really establish what you need to. And we're just gonna do basic movements, just breaking them down and giving modifications to get you up to 15 minutes of movement, 15, 20, we'll do a little bit of stretch so that you can focus on just you and not trying to keep up with the video. Okay, so if you have a squishy ball or something, just keep it close to start. And then, like I said before in the other video, if you have a blanket to put for underneath your wrist or your knees, whatever tends to bother you, it's gonna be really hard if you put it underneath your back because it's gonna alter your neutral pelvis, and I'm gonna show you that. And then again, if you have little hand weights, just keep them close. So what we're gonna do is just get on the floor to start, and I'm gonna show you guys how to find neutral pelvis. So you're gonna come to the mat, just roll yourself down or take yourself down where you're comfortable. Again, a lot of people have a lot of SI joint instability, and sometimes just doing that kind of seizes it up. So just get on the floor how you're comfortable. And we're just gonna start with just focusing on how to find your neutral pelvis. So your heels line up with your sits bones. So if you kind of line your heels up, it should right underneath where you sit on your bottom. Or there's two bony parts of your butt pretty much. So if you put your fingers there, you should feel those bony parts. Your knees are gonna always line up with your hips unless there's an exercise of turnout, but you should always line them up. So if you think wrist or shoulder, knee, and then ankle, it's all in alignment. All right, your belly consists of 3 sets of muscles. Your rectus abdominis is the one that gives you a 6-pack. It runs from here, right under your sternum, to the tip of your pubic bone. It's a big, long muscle. Again, the way to activate that is to pull your belly button to the spine without firing the glutes. So everyone tends to like seize and roll back to get their abs to come in, and that's not what you want because you don't want your glutes to fire. They do the work all day for you. You want to get your belly to do it. So you kind of just have to think of dropping the belly button to the floor. So if you think of kind of like if you were gonna zip up a pair of jeans that don't fit, like sometimes you have to lay down and suck in to like zip. You want to think of your belly button dropping down so that you can like button your pants. If you can think of it like that. You could also think of like if there was a weight on your belly button, it's pulling towards the mat. So like if you just kind of sink and pull, it should activate your belly. So everyone tends to do this when they do Pilates is kind of blow it up because they can't get the core to go down. So you have to kind of think of sink. All right, you have your obliques. They kind of run sideways like strides going across towards the rectus. So if you think of putting a corset on your rib cage, it should kind of cinch your waist together. And this is one of the hardest ones for people to get. But if you took a breath in through your nose and then you exhale it out really heavy, like you're blowing 80 candles out on a cake, you should feel your rib cage draw together if you really exhaled it out. So it should pull together, belly button to the spine. And then the last one is your transverse muscle, which is your lower abs. So it looks like a big rubber band. It connects to your lower back. So if you have any lower back pain, it usually means your core is really weak, and it's usually pelvic floor. Women tend to have a lot of pelvic floor dysfunction, especially with EDS. If you've had multiple children or pregnancies, carrying big babies, or just that extra weight on those little organs, and gravity starts to pull down from that overstretching, those pelvic floor muscles are the ones that are gonna make your lower back not hurt, or the controlling of your SI joint, which slides like this, where I have a lot of my trouble, and my core, I think pretty tight, is pretty strong, but it's still, the instability of it from EDS makes me have to really work on it every single day. I have to get on the floor or I end up hurting really bad the next day. So back to your transverse muscle, it is gonna be the part where you feel like you zip up like a pair of jeans that don't fit, like you're laying on your bed. If you wanna think of it as like coming up and closing up underneath your rib cage, you can think of it that way, or you can also think like if you had to go to the bathroom really bad and you were gonna be able to hold your bladder, if you feel like how you kind of have to pull up, it's not really a Kegel, but it's kind of that way if you want to think of a Kegel, if a doctor's ever told you about Kegeling, of going like you have to, your bladder's full and you have to really go to the bathroom and you're not going to make it. So it's kind of like that feeling.
Okay, so those are the 3 muscles that have to work to get it all to work together, which is overwhelming in itself already. But if you can kind of just tell yourself to sink your belly button to the spine and kind of zip up, usually they all start to kick in after a while. They have memory and they'll start to remember. In Pilates, you want to hold your pelvis, which is called neutral pelvis. So if you slid your fingers between your mat and your back, it should be able to have 2 finger space without arching or without tucking back and smashing your fingers. So an easy way to do it is if you make a triangle with your hand, stick it right over your pubic bone or right over your pelvis. If you roll back into the mat, your fingers go up higher than your thumbs. If you tilt yourself back the other way, your thumbs come up higher than your fingers. You want to come halfway back. So if you had a hot cup of coffee, a glass of wine, whatever your favorite drink is, to stick right on your belly, you don't want it to spill. So you should be able to kind of lay across those 2 knotty parts of your hip, which is your sacrum that kind of goes across. That is where you want to stabilize. Now, someone with EDS and any instability in the lower back or the SI joint, just sitting like this is going to cause a little bit of uncomfortability. So like I said, my SI joint's out all the time. Right now my left side is out. So me just sitting here right now, I can feel the left side kind of saying, hey, I'm over here, and doesn't feel that comfortable. But if I roll back, it feels a lot better, but my glutes have now fired and my abs have kicked off. So you're never gonna get your core if you don't keep that neutral pelvis. Now there are a couple exercises that you lose that neutral pelvis, and when I say it, then you'll know which ones, and there's not very many, maybe 3 or 4. All right, so we're gonna start off. Now Pilates has another breath pattern. It's opposite of what we do on a normal day. You usually breathe through your diaphragm where your belly rises and falls. In Pilates, you end up laterally breathing, or it's called a coastal breath. So you kind of expand your rib cage left to right. It gets way overwhelming when you're trying to do the exercise and remember everything you have to do. So just for now, focus on just breathing naturally so that you don't hold your breath, because that's what everyone does for Pilates too. All right, so you're gonna line your heels up with your sits bones, and then you're gonna start with neutral pelvis. So remember, you should just be able to slide your finger, 2 of them, 3 of them, right between your lower back, and then you've got your hot cup of coffee. All right, we're just gonna start with pelvic tilts. So you can't fire from the glute, you have to fire your hamstrings and sink your belly button in to roll back into the mat, and then to push away. So you're gonna inhale as you roll back, and then exhale, tilt away. But again, just breathe naturally. Don't force yourself to kind of fire everything to try to breathe in and out. All right, so this is just a basic range of motion to try to release the sacrum, to release the SI joint, or to try to wake it up. It's always good to do first thing in the morning if you feel really tight, and when you get up, you like have a lot of lower back tightness or tension or a little bit of pain. These are always a good one to do where you just roll your pelvis. So if you think of it like a bowl, if you tilt it back into the mat and then tilt it away, you're kind of just rolling your pelvis back and forth to kind of get that movement of the lower back and the SI. So you can just do 10, and you just want to be aware that your glutes don't fire. So you can see mine are off. You don't want to squeeze and fire if you can see the difference. So just without the glutes, and then try to fire, and then fire back. Sometimes I have to really think about doing it the wrong way now. So again, just basic tilts. Like I said, do 10, and that's good enough to try to just get that movement. If you have any like tailbone and SI stuff and it hurts too bad to roll back into the mat, you can just do a little bit without going all the way back and just work to where it feels good to try to get some movement and not feel like you have to come all the way back to find that range of motion. I have to think more about tailbone when it hurts. But right now it shouldn't really, it should be okay. So if you're a little bit more bony back there and don't have a lot of extra meat, you can, triple up your mat, like fold this part up and stick it underneath to kind of give you a little bit more support. See if that helps. And then we're gonna go to the next exercise. Okay, you're gonna tuck your tailbone, and then you're gonna peel yourself off the mat 1 vertebrae at a time. And then you want that re-articulation back down. So if you think of your upper back, rounding to the mat 1 vertebrae at a time, your tailbone comes all the way back to that neutral pelvis. So you got your squishy ball, or whatever you can, stick it between your knees. It's gonna activate your inner thighs, which connects to your pelvic floor. So if you're having a hard time activating your pelvic floor, when you stick something between your knees, Don't muscle to fire it. Just a little squeeze to keep some tension will actually kick in your transfers. So if bridging already bothers you to go into that curling up that we just started, you can just sit here and just put a little bit of tension on that ball to get that pelvic floor to start to strengthen. So the modification is just sit here, squeeze the ball 5 to 10 seconds and let it go, give yourself a break, and then just a little squeeze. Again, don't muscle to like squeeze really tight. You don't have to do huge movements in Pilates to get the benefit. This is where a lot of people have a hard time with like small centimeter changes make all the difference in the muscle versus these big ones that we're all used to like in the gym. All right, so if you want the real way or the unmodification is to come up into that shoulder bridge. So if you can see me, it should be your shoulder, hip, and knee are all in alignment so that you can have that long kind of plane action reaching away. And then articulate back down one vertebrae at a time. Tailbone comes back to the mat. So you're gonna inhale, scoop to lift. Push through your heels and your hamstrings to take you all the way up. Refine that articulation back down. So, me teaching all the time and having class continually flow, I tend to move quick. So you can always slow it down, stop the video, move through your things, and then pick it back up wherever you feel comfortable. You want to kind of think of like you're peeling one vertebrae up at a time on top of the shoulder blades, and then that rearticulation back down. So your hips are going to be the last thing to touch the mat. You really want to put each vertebrae back down, and then you always come back to neutral pelvis so that you go to that beginning and that ending spot. So if you're really tight, let's say upper thoracic is really tight. So like I have a winging scapula and it gets stuck right there all the time. So I'm usually really tight when I get to like right here. So I have to like really work and kind of wheel the pelvis underneath me to get to it. So if you're really tight, you can use that articulation to kind of lift and lower your body to get that length out of the vertebrae, which gives you that stretch to make you feel like you're not compressed in the disc. Okay, we're gonna try chest lift. So this is just a basic Pilates move too, just to try to get your upper abdominal wall to get strong enough to lift your head up. So your hands come behind your head, and you're just gonna let your head cradle into your hands. So everyone tends to like think of it like an old school crunch. You don't wanna crank forward. You're just gonna tuck your chin, hold a lemon, like if you're holding a lemon or avocado or something underneath your chin, and then you roll it back. Okay, so here is where people tend to blow up in the rib cage. You're gonna exhale to lift and inhale to lower. So if you start to work on your breath, you exhale on the work, inhale when you have help. So right now I have to do the work to lift up, so I use my exhale to help close down my abdominal wall, and then I use my inhale when I come back because gravity's bringing me back to the floor. So exhale to lift and see how high up I'm coming. You only have to lift up till your shoulder blade's starting to come up, and my whole abdominal wall is doing the work to close down. Let me see if I can get it to where I don't do it right. So if I push up and then bring it up, I don't know if you can see, but like this is blowing up towards the ceiling, and that's gonna make your stomach round out. You can strengthen the muscles if you push your belly up. So you always wanna make sure that you're pulling down. And again, if you can't get up this high, if it bothers your neck, you can always put a towel and hold onto the sides of the towel, wrap it around the underside of your head, and kind of just curl and back. You can do smaller movements to here. Everyone tends to hurt their neck because they look up. You always want to look down at your belly button so that you get that rounding up and that curl. So again, just do what works for you. Okay, we're gonna add a rotation. So the rotation comes from your waistline. So you're gonna think of your last rib reaching for your hip bone. It's gonna be a small range of motion. To come back, exhale, rotate. Inhale to center. You can come back and rest if you want in between. If you feel like you can keep going, stay lifted and find that rotation with the lift. So exhale and rotate. Inhale to center. So again, you're tucking your chin, elbow going up towards the knee, eyes down towards the belly button, and that shortening the distance of your rib cage and your waistline. Again, if you tend to pull on your neck too much, you can use that towel to kind of rotate you through. I don't know if you can see on the video, but if I do it wrong, this is what happens with most people, is that they pull the neck and then they tip up the hip. So remember your hot cup of coffee. If I go this way, you can probably see, you don't want this backside of your hip to come off the mat. So you have to really isolate that rotation to lift. So if I'm doing it right, my hip stays back, my hot cup of coffee is on my bladder. So 10's the magic number. Don't do any more. Again, if that feels like a lot of work to get to 5, then just stay there. You're gonna feel your upper rib cage kind of really have to work. And then that lower abs to stabilize your pelvis so that your legs don't shift with you. All right, take your ball out. So the next thing is kind of called a leg change. You bring your leg up at tabletop. Modification is to keep this foot down. So basic, unless you can move and you feel like you can stabilize. Now, if you keep the watch, these pants are good so you can see the line, but like a 90-degree hinge, my knee stops at my hip, my lower abs are doing the work to drop my foot. So if I was gonna drop my toe into a cold pull and then I'm gonna pull it back up, you wanna try to keep your hip flexor off. These guys work for you all day to help you sit and bend over. So they like to take over. So if you can really get into your pelvic floor, the top of your thigh should start hurting if you actually, well, you should not hurt, but like feel your top of your thigh if you're doing it right. So then you just plant your foot and then you go to the other side. So hinge out, 90 degrees. So again, my abs are in tight, my shoulders are wide across, so like opening up to try to not round forward. And then I'm just hinging out. Nothing else is moving. If you can see the stabilization, my abs are controlling the leg movement. And they initiate the leg to drop down. They initiate to lift it back up. You want to eventually to be able to get your legs up here. Now, usually people have a lot of lower back pain because their core is not strong enough yet. But then eventually you want to reach down and then you work to holding your leg up and one goes down at a time. Eventually you get to switching midair. So the wrong way is to pull your knee back and roll through your pelvis. If you can see like this movement, there's no stability in the core and you're just going all over the place and you end up hurting your back. So start off to just that hinge. I know it's not gonna feel like a lot, but if you can work those little muscles, you'll get stronger quicker and you can move quickly through the extra exercises. All right, hamstring pull. Basic write down is to just reach up and pull that hamstring towards you for a second if you're tight. So you're gonna get a stretch. Now, the harder way is to roll up and grab your ankle or your calf. You never wanna pull behind your knee. Always pull behind the stronger muscle, bigger muscles of the hamstring or the calf. Or if you can get up this height, we're pretty flexible with EDS, so most people are pretty bendy. So keeping your core tight, you're gonna pull it towards you and then switch like a pair of scissors. So this is really hard for most people to go. So what you can do is keep your head back, pull it towards you, take your leg down, make sure you're set across your pelvis, leg comes up, pull it towards you. Take it down, lift it up, pull, again, stabilization of your pelvis. Another modification is to bend your knee if it's getting too much into that lower back or you're really tight, bend your knee, extend your leg, and break it down this way to try to get that extension out of your hamstrings to keep your lower back protected. So those are perfect exercises for that. Let's bring yourself up. So easy, safe way is to round yourself up. So you're sitting up. All right, so we're gonna sit on your sits bones. Remember, they're the knotty parts of your bottom. All right, you wanna think of your pelvis like a wheel. So we did this on the floor. You're just gonna tuck back. Now here is where I think people have a hard time with their tailbones and it starts to hurt. And then you use your core to lift back up. So if you want, you can use your blanket for this one now where you stick it underneath your bottom because you're not gonna alter your neutral pelvis because you're not laying on your back. So just give yourself a little bit more cushion. Hold your knees. You can put the ball between your knees to keep you active in those inner thighs of that curling, and then use your abs to lift. So you don't wanna like quick push and pull. You want C curving, so your pubic bone's coming towards your nose as you round up. So as you get stronger in your core, you start to go back farther and you use your range of motion to get into your abs. So again, remember your belly has to like really hollow out. If you think of a big beach ball right here, you use your abs to lift you up and to take you back. And if you don't want a ball between your knees, you can use that for the support for your lumbar spine too, so that you can find your range of motion to lift and roll back. Sometimes the ball won't stay there where you want it to. So like if you come up, and sometimes it rolls away. So just, you can always keep your hand there, put one behind your knee to keep it, but you wanna work to getting up
to that really tall posture. So usually if you get yourself to lift, you can kind of see where you can go, and then you find your range of motion. All right, so those are great to just start for basic, and then just some basic stuff on your hands and knees. So now remember, if you have really bad wrist, if the bending in the wrist is too much tension, put the mat there or the blanket there, or you can go up on fist. Same thing, use it for your knees if you tend to have bad knees. Stick it under your knees. So usually, I've had surgery on mine, so my knees are usually pretty good at this point, but sometimes they don't like being on the floor enough or too long. So if you put any kind of pad or anything there, will help. All right, so you wanna be what we call in Pilates quadruped. Now look, if you see me, how hyperextended I get into my elbows, and I tend to not pay attention to it until I'm filming myself and then I can see it. So you wanna keep soft. You don't ever wanna go into hyperextension of your joints. So you should have shoulder, elbow, and wrist line up. So we're just gonna do like basic, again, movements. Take your left leg out. So what everybody tends to do is to roll into the right side. You wanna level your pelvis. So if you think of your hip bones squaring to the floor, you're just gonna lift and lower your leg. So watch the shifting of that right side to just lift and lower. So this might be really hard for somebody to get their leg to lift up, and you never wanna toss, because then you end up hurting your back. So just a lift and lower, it should be a hamstring. You can do the same thing with a knee bent and kind of just lift and bring it in, and then lift and bring it in. So abs are gonna be the stabilizers. Your core is keeping you controlled to the really deep in, and you want a long spine. So never sinking into that lower back. You don't wanna be pushed up into almost like a cat stretch. It's just that elongation of the spine. So again, you can just do like knee lift and lower. If you're comfortable to extend, lift and lower. If you need to come up on fist, it makes it stronger through that support of your shoulder girdle and your wrist. You wanna always think of squeezing lemons again under your armpits to keep that elongation. Now see if I do it wrong, this is what it ends up looking like. And you move through like this. You do it right, long spine, long shoulder, lats down the back, which is your shoulder girdle, right under your armpit, right under that bra strap, to lift and lower. So you can do both sides again. Number 10 is the magic number. And we're just gonna go to there, and then we'll do a little bit of a stretch. So if you can sit sideways, it's kind of like a mermaid stretch where you sit. If you're comfortable, it doesn't bug a knee or a hip to sit in like a true mermaid. Sitting, one leg goes to the side, one goes to the front. Whatever works best for you. Sometimes stacking the hips like this doesn't feel good for people either, because it leans into the hip a little bit. You can sit cross-legged and go where you're comfortable. Like I said, EDS, we tend to be more bendy, so we're more flexible. So usually sitting this way, most people kind of feel the best, I think, but go where you're comfortable. So if you can sit this way, you want a long spine, your rib cage again over your hips. You're just gonna take an inhale up and get a big side stretch, up and over. Good, use your inhale to lift up, and then to the other side. And then you just switch your legs. So same thing, sit in mermaid if you can, make sure you switch your legs. I'm gonna do it so you guys can see both sides of like sitting open in the hip, and you take your inhale up, and then your exhale, and your inhale to the other side. And then back. All right, so those are about 8 to 10 exercises you can do on a daily basis. If it doesn't feel good one day, and you try the next and it feels good, and then the next day doesn't feel good, then you just work to what feels good and increase your repetitions. 10's always the magic number in Pilates. Work on just pulling the belly button to the spine. If you can't even do those pelvic tilts, just put that little ball between your knees, squeeze and close down the abdominal wall. The more you do those contractions and pulling the belly button to the spine, the quicker you're strong. The quicker your core is going to get stronger. And you can do it when you're like driving the car, pull your belly button in, work on posture, sitting up. The quicker you strengthen the core, the quicker that you tend to strengthen your extra muscles, so your appendages. So when this is strong, then all these are strong. Pilates starts to stabilize the joints as you get stronger. the muscles develop to stabilize the joint so you have less dislocations, subluxations, injuries, and all the fun stuff, surgeries that we all have with EDS. So that's just your beginner, basic understanding of Pilates and just starting to find movement. So give yourself some grace. Find the time, 10 minutes a day at the most. If you can't get to 10, you're at 5, you're at 3. I did see someone put up, like, if you really can't even get out of bed, some of those don't give you a lot of like stability, but you can do a lot of that, like pushing and bridging up, squeezing of the ball. That'll give you a little bit more movement to where your core starts to get stronger. And then I know there's a lot of days that we wake up and we don't want to do anything. We don't want to move because we're hurting, but finding movement every day, even when you don't want to, will make you feel so much better in the long run. So I hope this video helps. We're gonna go to the next video, so make sure once you get to that point and you feel like you're strong enough and you're capable to keep moving fluidly through that 15 minutes, then you can hop onto the next video and then it'll go through for a good 45. So we'll see you in the next video.